From the Netflix of toys that wanted to make parents' lives easier, to the poncho-like business that went bust almost as soon as it launched, here are the worst Shark Tank fails, starting with Toy Guru. Okay, do you even know kids? They hoard toys, so what makes you think a renting business model would work for them? These guys like to call their business the Netflix of toys, which allowed customers to rent toys on a monthly basis. Looks like a great idea on paper, right? It did to the sharks too.
1,000 people ready to
Nikki,
sign
I
up.
think that's a great idea.
Mark Cuban and Kevin O'Leary invested $200,000 for a 35% stake in the business in 2011. Surprise, surprise, Toy Guru filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in April 2012, barely 1 year after receiving the investment. Now, whether it was because of inexperience, poor management, excessive growth, or a mix of all three, the business finally shut down in 2016. The founders of Toy Guru were Hutch Paustick, Nicky Pope, Phil Smyth, Ronnie Mirzaeans, and Young Chu. Anyway, if you're wondering why it failed, basically, it was for two main reasons, according to one of the company's founders, Phil Smyth. One, the toys were difficult to find at reasonable prices. They'd hoped that their investors would be able to put them in touch with people at big names like Mattel, but nothing came of it. Plus, the toys' vastly diverse proportions meant that shipping fees would soar out of control. They were using a free shipping model, which ended up being a major concern. They realized very early that something was majorly off about their business model, but their recently acquired investors stopped them. Initially, they had a boost in demand when the show aired, which is the case with most Shark Tank businesses, by the way. But for Toy Guru, it wasn't ideal because a company that relies on stock doesn't need a sudden flood. Phil believes that the company would have done much better to grow gradually and organically, because this would have given them more time to address some of the sourcing and shipping issues. In fact, he came to the conclusion that the company's participation in Shark Tank was actually bad for the business. You see, Toy Guru is a fantastic example of how Shark Tank is not always a home run for the contestants. Not all publicity is good publicity, folks, especially at a bad time. But this next company could have done itself some favor with any publicity at all, really. I'm talking about Sweet Balls. First of all, who came up with that name? Anyway, Cakeball entrepreneurs James McDonald and Cole Egger must have done something really right, because they received a whopping $250,000 from Mark Cuban and Barbara Corcoran in exchange for 25% of their business. According to reports, the cake company once made $700,000 in Cakeball sales just from 7-Eleven franchises. However, that sweet success didn't last too long. In the end, Egger was sued by McDonald for breach of contract after he founded Cakeballs. Yup, a rival business. In fact, McDonald even asked for a restraining order at one point. This was a classic fail of two founders falling out. In fact, the main issue was that the founders' disagreement happened shortly after the Shark Tank episode, showing the invention aired, which cost the company a huge chance to become a success. Anywho, James, who was the OG behind Sweet Balls brand and product, regained control once the dispute was settled. But because of the lost Shark Tank opportunity and the passing of the Cakeball craze, the company could never pick up, and McDonald only takes it as a side gig. Now, nothing annoys me like a promising product that turns out to be utter crap. Something similar happened with the Breathometer. It was a portable gadget created by Charles Michael Yim that measured blood alcohol content and warned drivers when they were above normal levels. Users could blow into a mouthpiece while using a smartphone, mostly to check if they exceeded the legal alcohol limit. Sounds a little too good to be true, right? Well, the fact that all 5 sharks wanted in on the action and invested jointly shows how brilliant the concept was. However, there were many issues right after the deal closed. At first, they struggled to fulfill the orders, but eventually managed around it. Then, it soon became clear that the gadget was not performing as promised. The device's results weren't reliable, and on occasion it gave readings for blood alcohol levels that were far off base, as in, it was showing people a reading way less than their actual levels. This was a serious issue because it meant those who shouldn't drive were doing so. The app literally told them they were fine. That's when the Federal Trade Commission stepped in and gave Breathometer the order to fully refund each buyer and remove the device from sale. There was more drama, though. Mark Cuban dubbed it the worst execution in Shark Tank's history and charged the founder with misusing funds. By the way, the company is still operating despite being a Shark Tank fail. They sort of evolved into a new but similar device called Mint. It claims to measure biomarkers linked to gum disease and poor breath. I wonder how far off the readings are now, huh? Maybe this case was when the Sharks really thought long and hard and started pulling out of deals they had a change of heart on. Like You Smell Soap. After the on-air handshake agreement, Megan Cummins tried unsuccessfully for 6 months to get in touch with Robert Herjavec. He eventually returned with an updated offer of $50,000 for 50% of the business, which Megan rejected. Now, it does happen from time to time that people change their minds on the show. Naturally, Sharks have the right to modify their offer after conducting their due diligence, but the fact that it took them 6 months and very little contact to decide and commit is a major issue in and of itself, right? I mean, for a startup struggling to meet increased demand as a result of a recent appearance on national television, a no in time is better than a delayed maybe. Well, Megan carried on operating the company with a different investor, who eventually purchased the entire You Smell Soap enterprise. But soon after the acquisition, the company went out of business. I'm left to speculate as to whether Herjavec acting differently and more hastily would have changed the course of this business, but then luxury soap? I'm not too sure. But you know who was sure about their brainchild? The Foot Fairy. Despite the founder's best efforts to avoid foot issues in kids brought on by wearing uncomfortable shoes, there were too many issues with the Foot Fairy app and business strategy from the get-go. Basically, the app was designed to generate revenue through commissions by allowing users to purchase shoes directly from brands like Zappos and other online shoe retailers. Shapiro and Brooks hired developers to construct the app for them because they had no prior expertise with it. Sadly, the software they created had bugs and couldn't record commission payments, which prevented the entrepreneurs from truly profiting from their invention. Plus, the deal with Mark Cuban was never finalized, and Foot Fairy ceased operations 6 months after the 2014 Shark Tank episode aired. And guess what? Now, there are so many shoe-sizing apps available, what a waste. Speaking of which, it was a device that used a number of bands to make push-ups simpler and more efficient, while targeting particular muscle regions. Jack Barringer, the owner of Body Jack, was asked by Barbara Corcoran on Shark Tank that he needed to drop 30 pounds to prove that Body Jack was worthy of receiving funding. And guess what? That ended up happening, but the company was unsuccessful moving forward. Later, Barbara said Cactus Jack had stolen all of her money and turned Body Jack one of the worst deals she had ever made. Oh, and Body Jack closed down in 2021. No idea why, but that's $180,000 down the drain. And now for Show No Towels, the most bizarre Shark Tank fails, if you ask me. The connection between founder Shelley Ayler and investor Lori Greiner showed cracks right away. That can never be good, right? Shelley Ayler made an appearance on the program in 2012 with her invention for young children who might need to change such a swimming pool. She gave her poncho towel hybrid the name Show No Towels. Ayler managed to win over a number of sharks, but she ultimately decided to team up with Lori Greiner, who paid her $50,000 right then and there. The first time a contestant had ever received money on demand on the show, but there was a catch. Greiner allegedly urged Shelley not to cash the check, and afterwards attempted to renegotiate the terms of the agreement. It was changed to a loan that could only be used for sales instead of other expenses, and demanded 70% of the company instead of 25% of it. Naturally, Shelley Ayler rejected them, plus, the company's future depended greatly on a massive Disney deal. But after many months of trying to bring the deal to a close, it failed, due to the product's online sales not being good enough for Disney. So, from the poncho-like towel business that went bust almost as soon as it launched, to the Netflix of toys that allowed kids to rent all sorts of toys, these were the worst Shark Tank fails.